That's why it was a tragedy for the nomadic tribe if an old woman died, because she knew things that the tribe needed for survival. If a young child died, it was not a tragedy at all. It was just they threw away the corpse, because to them it didn't matter. And today, of course, it's the opposite. If a young child dies, we see it as a catastrophe because that 90-year-old life we expected never materialized, and life is so unfair, whereas an old woman, if she dies, couldn't care less. Which just goes to show how our values are really dependent on the technology and the environment we live in.
And this function is actually, if you look at a conservative philosopher like Plato, this is what he didn't like about writing. It would make people depend less on their own memory and more on impulses coming from the outside, which he was really critical against. So,
and ironically, then, as a great writer, he would never have survived without written language. But we have an empirical measurement that we strictly follow, because if you know how neo-Darwinism works, it doesn't really see history like a loop like that. It's great that I can actually show you that. There are other histories like nothing happens, nothing happens, nothing happens, then a revolution happens. And then nothing happens, and then the revolution happens. And the revolution builds on the other revolution. And that's exactly how this works. So the amount of information available in the nomadic tribe, maximum amount of information available in the nomadic tribe is what you can store inside an old woman's head. Written language. Well, what you can have in a library of written books is the maximum amount of information, which is 1,000,000 times more than what you can store inside a head. Next revolution, printed language. Oh my God, you have printed books around. They're a lot cheaper, a lot more of them than anything handwritten you could make. Well, that's another loop, jump, and another 1,000,000 times over. And then look at the internet. And the amount of information we have today compared to only 10 years ago, it's 1,000,000 times.
And these feedback loops are self-enforcing, because if you all of a sudden have cheap books, it makes sense if you're a poor peasant to learn how to read, because there are before you can afford it, and then you have a growing audience, so it makes even more sense to start writing books and publishing books, and this spiral keeps reinforcing and growing and growing and growing until you have a complete new society with a bourgeoisie interested in all these new ideas, new science, new discoveries from unknown
and
parts
having
of the
huge
world.
arm muscles being able to hunt has become completely redundant.
I suppose maybe we have a question from Mambudo. No?
Actually, I'm going to go into the corner. I'm going to let you guys talk for a little bit. Okay. I'm going to go talk to the audience.
I imagine you've read The Singularity is Near, the Kurzweiler book.
Yeah.
What I mean, I know you said it's not like about predicting, but how you look at this kind of book when you have when you're building a vision of the world like the Netocratic society. I mean, the fact that we can store all human knowledge in a rock is actually something that is just the continuation of what you were describing.
Well, I'm totally convinced that the day we can actually do that, it won't be dramatic. The funny thing about technology is that if we discuss technology 100 years from now, to us it would look like shocking that it could exist. But once we're there, it's like Turbo 3G. It's like, once I got Turbo 3G in my laptop at home and I didn't have to even bother about connecting to the internet through a landline any longer, it was more like, why didn't I have this 10 years ago? It was so natural, because the technology seems to arrive in a way that, at least if you're into technology and you're really interested and you can get the latest gadgets and you can afford them, then once things arrive, you're not really surprised. I mean, I wrote an article in Sweden 5 years before the iPod arrived about the iPod. I said, why don't somebody make a good-looking, well-designed product where I can store all my music, when we already have the memory hardware out there we need to make an iPod. But it took somebody like Steve Jobs to get actually the right people together to design the physical product and then start selling it, and then it became a huge hit. Because there were millions of people out there like me who were dying to get that kind of a product. So once technology arrives, it doesn't seem to be that dramatic, and that's why I never use the word singularity. To me, singularity is a religious word. Okay. It somehow says that one day Messiah will arrive, and that's the singularity of history. And it's more like, no, not even the Big Bang probably existed. No, we didn't even have it start.
The thing with most books about the future or about the internet or whatever is that the writer feels that he or she must have an opinion about it. Either it's very good or it's very bad. Either it will solve all our problems and we will live in paradise, or it's terrible and it will mean the end of culture, the end of reading, the end of quality, everything. And we're just standing apart from all that and saying, hey, we're the weather guys. We're telling you what we think will happen and why, and then after you read us and evaluate us, you could wear appropriate clothes. If it's going to rain, you better wear your rubber boots. We're not saying it's good, we're not saying it's bad. We're not selling the internet, we're not selling computers.
And keeping that neutral, cold attitude towards the new media is absolutely central to our work. If we lose that, we'd be really sloppy sociologists.
You said earlier that something which was quite disturbing to me, that you measure the power of people not according to the money they have, but according to, for example, the number of antennas they have on their, so according to the access to technology they have.
And the use of technology.
And the use of technology.
We also mentioned how many hours a day or minutes a day they use their mobile phone.
And you mentioned the antennas.
Yes.
But for me, you have the access to technology which is passive. And if you mention what the access to technology that people have in the suburbs, go to the suburbs in France and you'll find like so many antennas everywhere, I think more than you have in the middle of Paris. People have access to thousands of channels, but that's passive. They receive information.
If you're passive,
information that they're given by...
No. They also use the antennas to go on the internet.
Sure, but what power does it give to them? Because
it gives them power.
They go to Sky Blogs.
TV does not give you power. If you read about it, there's a tragic chapter in the book. The 6th chapter of Netocracy is about the concentrarians. And we describe the concentrarians as people who are exactly sitting on sofas watching television all day long and never communicate. If you're not it's not using technology that gives you power. It's how you use the technology. And if you're not communicating, if you don't belong to a network of people where you have a powerful position, you're being listened to, you are not a netocrat. You are a concentrarian, you are the underclass.
What gives the position?
So we find the underclass in the suburbs of Paris. Yes, we do.
We're not idiots.
Because the internet is something I know. I mean, these people in the suburbs, because it's a very good example, these people in the suburbs, they have access to the internet. They have blogs. They're skillful, I mean, more than my father, right? They know how to use blogs, they circulate information, to go to forums, to exchange information. But at the end of the day, they exchange information among each other.
Yes.
So it doesn't give them more, real power.
Yes.
And the proof is that they have to go to the street to fight for it.
That's exactly how you build power. I'll tell you what, Coca-Cola will pay millions of dollars within a very short time for people in the Parisian suburbs to give them access to other Moroccan immigrants, for example, that they can't reach any other way. It's precisely by connecting with other networks that are already existing that you give people power. And then within those networks, certain people become powerful and others become not. In France today, for example, if you work at an advertising agency in Paris, and you walk in through the door and you're a Moroccan immigrant, they will jump on you and employ you right away. Because they need to have more Moroccan immigrants, for example, working for them at the advertising agency. Otherwise, they cannot offer the companies they work for access to Moroccan immigrants in France. You cannot offer access to Moroccan immigrants in France, and there are a couple of million of them. You cannot offer that unless you have a Moroccan immigrant employed at your company who has direct personal access to that niche market. And society today, there's no main market left. The main market is gone. France, as an idea of 50 million people all watching the same TV show or listening to the same thing, does not exist any longer. It has disappeared. France, the world, is only niches. Little niches everywhere. And being a Moroccan immigrant in a Paris suburb is a typical niche. And if you're then a successful communicator within that network of people, you will have power. That's exactly what I'm saying.
If I want to follow the comparison between, the guy in the suburb and my father, for example.
Yeah.
The guy in the suburb, he has more access to blogs, to the internet.
Yeah.
He's got more antennas. He watched like 1,000 channels. Does it mean he has more power than my father?
He will.
Yeah, but you're betting on the future.
We are, of course, that's the whole point. We're writing about the future.
They've started to bet on the future 8 years ago. And actually what happened in the 8 years from 2000
so many things became true.
Actually is a proof of the way.
No, I'm not saying they're wrong.
We're not writing about
that. I wouldn't say that.
I'm not saying they're wrong.
A small story about Sweden. We haven't had commercial radio for very long. It used to be strictly state radio.